My name is Anil Kaul. I am one of the founders and the CEO of a company called Absolute Data. Absolute Data is basically a business analytics company. We do, we use analysis of various types, statistical analysis, visual analytics, predictive analytics, and so on, to solve business problems for our clients. So in my role, one of the things that I get to do a lot is actually work very closely with business decision makers, right from CEO level to manager level, where people are actually making decisions, and my role typically is to help them figure out how they could use data, how they could use analysis, how they could use outputs that comes from all of that to make those decisions better. So what I'm going to do today is talk about how we can bridge the gap between decision makers and, when I call it advanced analytics here, you can remove the word advanced and think a lot more about analytics, because I think it's equally applicable to all kinds of analytics. And by the way, that does mean I'm assuming that there is a gap between these. Hopefully you guys will agree when I get to that point. And then I want to also introduce a new concept, what we call internally decision engineering, which is how do you, in order to bridge this gap, I believe there is a different kind of thinking that we need to bring forward, and I just tend to call that decision engineering. In fact, there was an article recently in Forbes which talked about exactly the same issue, and they called it data-driven decision making or something like that, but I think this term is a little better. All right, so let me get started then. Okay, so this one I'm sure you guys have seen before. Okay, so I'm going to just do a very quick setup. I'm not going to spend a lot of time because I'm sure you've probably seen this chart more enough times than you really want to see this. But the point that I wanted to make is that big data, analytics, all of that has become a big issue everywhere. You go to any organization. In fact, if you are in the analytics space, you can't even walk in without using the word big data and analytics. Again, it's something that's been around for a little while now. I think it's going through its hype cycle as we've all seen. Despite all of this, there is a common joke that I've seen, I think, on LinkedIn maybe 20 times, in conferences, again, 15 to 20 times, so please excuse me if I show you something that you've seen many times before, which is, that big data is like teenage sex. Everyone talks about it. Nobody really knows how to do it. Everyone thinks everyone else is doing it, so everyone claims they're doing it too. And by the way, I will tell you one thing, this is very true. I have actually been at big data conferences where, in fact, I remember one about 6 months back, where one of my clients was presenting. The day before that, I had a meeting with their senior management where they were saying that, we set up all this clusters, Hadoop clusters, we have bought all the software that we needed, now what do we do with this? And, and the same team was presenting next day in the conference, so I think a lot of that is going on. So I want to share some facts with you. This is something that's come out in a study, actually it came last year, by a company called Corporate Executive Board out of Washington, D.C., and they surveyed 800 executives from Fortune 5,000 companies, Fortune 1,000 companies. And what they found was shocking, that on average, and this is marketing executives that they were talking to, they're just depending on data for 11% of all customer-related decisions, right? So it's customer-related, where the data typically is available readily. An area where data has been used for a long time. I've spent 20 years in this space, and I've been using data for 20 years, and despite that, only 11% of decisions are using data right now. Something that certainly shocked me when I looked at this. Fact number 2. This is from an article in HBR, I think it was November of 2013. So companies are investing like crazy in data scientists. I'm sure many of you guys are sitting here probably. data warehouses, and data analytics software, but many of them don't have much to show for their efforts. It's possible they never will. Pretty strong statement, right? And I just, in my earlier page, was showing you that this year, the expectation is that companies are going to spend about $14 billion on data analytics, all the technologies that go into that. And essentially what it is saying is that you're going to spend $14 billion without an expectation of knowing what you're going to get out of it. Not a good position to be in. Another fact. This is, I don't know if you're aware of Wikibon. This is an open source research group. And they did some analysis, and they said, based on our analysis, the average company right now is getting a return of about 55 cents on the dollar on big data projects. Again, another number which I hope doesn't get in front of the people who are buying all this technology and who are investing, because if you're getting 55 cents on a dollar, I'm happy to take the dollar, I'll give you back 70, right? So this is another one of those where you can see that there is a lot of investment going on, there's a lot of excitement about this, and by the way, and this is not just the last 2 or 3 years. I've been working in this space for the last 20 years, and I've seen this happen all the time. There was in the late 90s, early 2000s, there was this whole thing about data warehousing, where companies were going and building these huge data warehouses, implementing all types of BI technology with the idea that their business is going to change. And I saw there was a lot of frustration all around in terms of what businesses got out of that. And I think that kind of has continued. The good news here is that despite all of that, people are still optimistic, they're still willing to spend, they're still willing to go forward with these investments. And I think the reason for that is because the value that one can deliver through data and the value that one can deliver through analytics is so big that you just cannot not invest in that. Here's another fact, and I think probably the last one that I'm going to share. So again, going back to the Wikibon, they looked at what are the 3 reasons for not achieving maximum ROI from big data. First was lack of skilled big data experts, which I think over time will get taken care of. Immature technology, which is just technology is still coming together, it's going to put together. But what I wanted to focus on was the last one, lack of a compelling need. That's pretty scary, right? If we are not successful in doing something because we don't know why we're doing it, what's the need for doing it, that's a very risky business to be in. That's a very risky place to be making your career on, because few years down the line, people are going to wake up and realize, hey, all the investments that we made aren't giving us, because we don't know what to do with it. What is the compelling reason for building, collecting all the data, storing all the data, making it accessible, doing analysis on it, building up a whole team which is looking at analytics, if we don't see a compelling need? So this is a question that we have asked many times at Absolute Data, because as I said, this is what we do. We work with our clients, we help them make business decisions using all the data and all the insights that come from the data. So this is and as I said, this is a very important question, because clients pay us a lot of money for doing all the analysis that we're doing. And if they are in a situation where they don't see the value out of it, I know our long-term survival is going to be at stake, not just the company, but of the industry. So something has to change somewhere so that we can get value out of all the hard work that everybody puts in. And by the way, I will tell you one thing. I've talked to both the sides. I talked to the decision makers, and they would say, we invested so much money, and we're not seeing impact on our business. I'm not seeing, my decisions becoming very different from what I was doing 5 years back. I've seen the same frustration on the analytics and the data side of the world, which is that we are providing so much information and so many tools to all our senior execs, decision makers. They just don't use it. Why don't they use it? They're not comfortable. They're still going back and making decisions based on their understanding, their gut, their feel, and they just do not know how to use it. So there's this gap where you have both the sides, the users and the people who are putting things together, not happy, not in a mood where they should be. So what does that tell you? What that tells me certainly is that there is something fundamentally wrong here. There is something fundamentally wrong that we as an industry have been doing for all these years, and something needs to change, because nobody doubts the value that you can get and the impact that you can have on your organization through data and various types of analytics. The challenge is, how do we make that reality come through? And that's where I'm going to talk about some of the weaknesses that I think that are there in the current, what I call the traditional insights delivery model. And I'll tell you why I'm calling it the traditional insights delivery model, because typically analytics, whether it is dashboards, whether it is any type of PowerPoints that are coming out of it, are very much focused on delivering insights. Right? Here is a customer insight that I can tell you. The most famous example, of course, those from the data from the BI world will remember, was the Walmart, when they found out every time somebody went to buy a diaper, also bought a bottle of beer or a six-pack of beer. Right? That was an insight. And that's what our traditional model has been, that we will give you an insight and you figure out what you do with that. So, and I think that's actually a big problem, because what we're doing is we're leaving the responsibility of using these insights and the information that we are providing to the decision makers on them, and then saying, go and figure out how you're going to change your decision based on this. And so that's the first issue. So by the way, what usually happens is you have some smart business decision makers who have used this, who've used data before, so they can actually figure out what to do. But majority of the people cannot. They're not trained, they aren't used, they're not sure what to do about it. So that's why you get to the number like 11%, as I had mentioned earlier. The second is on where the focus is. The focus tends to be very much on past performance. It will tell you, we are very good at telling people what worked and what did not work. We do a lot of analysis, for example, of marketing campaigns. And we would have a meeting at the end of the quarter where we have the entire team sitting there, and we will tell them, you ran 10 promotions this quarter, 6 of them did very well, and we have a positive ROI on them. 6 of them, or 4 of them did not do well, and here is what the ROI was. And then we go into all these details about what the reasons were, what happened, why it didn't work, and so on and so forth. Now think about it from the perspective of the manager who was running these promotions. The positive view of it is, he or she is being told what worked, what didn't, so they will learn. The negative view of this is, his or her boss is sitting there, and I am giving them a report card at the end of the quarter and telling them how well they did in decision making and running these promotions. And by the way, we run into this situation many times, particularly when we work with a new client who hasn't done a lot of analytics, where managers are really scared. They're very fidgety when we go to the meeting, because they're worried they're going to look bad. Because we will do all this analysis and tell them what they did well, but we'll also tell them what they didn't do well. Now, is that the goal of what we wanted to do? Absolutely not. Our goal is to help you make better decisions, not tell you what you did well in the past. But the focus typically right now tends to be on what happened in the past, not on improving your future decisions. And I think that's one of the big issues that we face. The third is the delivery model itself. And this is actually a little bit more, sorry, I'm just trying to figure out one thing. Okay, sorry, I realize there's a typo here. I apologize for that. This is the first thing being copied here. Should it not be? Let me just tell you what actually I meant it to be here. So on the delivery model, typically the analytics delivery model tends to be very service oriented, which is you have a team that goes and runs some analysis and then goes and presents the results, the insights, the findings that they have found. And that creates multiple problems. And by the way, I am saying there are problems because we have done this for 10 years. where we are sitting and running these analyses and presenting. The first problem that I see is it is episodical. It happens once a month, once a quarter. In fact, I was talking to somebody at Microsoft, and they were telling us, with the new changes that have happened, the new person who's taken the lead wants to see the results every week. So what do? They've thrown more bodies at it so that the analysis can be run every week now. Well, that's expensive, takes a lot of time, and is not always the best way to deliver those analyses. Second is the insights that we are delivering through the delivery model tend to be either delivered too early in the process, and by the way, many times they're delivered too late. The decision has been made, and I've actually sat in meetings where we would go and we would find that the decision is already been made, and we are making this big, huge presentation about what they should have done. Another issue that comes is that the format and the way these insights are presented is not very user-friendly. Right? If you're sitting and trying to make a pricing decision, you have to remember on page 55, line 18, there was this insight which I should be applying to my pricing decision right now. Most of the time you forget about it. You kind of try to look for it, you don't find it. Many times the insights are being provided in a manner where it will take a visit to figure out how to use it. So like, for example, when we are doing pricing analysis, a lot of times I see analysis being done and the decision makers are given price elasticity. Well, it's a great measure of how your market would respond if you were to change price, but when you are actually trying to change price, you're not sure how to use something like price elasticity to figure out what my price should be. I'm not, my goal here is to figure out whether I should price this at $50 or $48, and price elasticity doesn't really tell me. There's a gap between what you're giving me and what I really need. So, going back to what I wanted to say in this page was that there is actually a significant issue in how traditionally insights have been delivered, how traditionally data has been used. And by the way, these days, anywhere you go, you will see huge focus on dashboards. In fact, when I was walking the halls here, I saw the same thing. There are a lot of companies with dashboards, and nice dashboards. You can use touch screens and move things around in a dashboard. Fantastic. But if you think of it, dashboards face exactly the same issue as well. I am giving you numbers, but I'm not telling. So I'm giving you a good view of what has happened, but I'm not telling you what you should be doing. I expect you, the decision maker, to figure that out on your own. So these are the 4 things that we've seen because of this business model or because of the delivery model. First is a very limited impact on business decisions. People tend to not use data as much as they could. In fact, I would, anybody who reads HBR, you will find that every other month there is at least one article that talks about this particular topic. Second is resistance to adoption of analytics. A lot of people don't want to adopt analytics, and by the way, that also means they don't want to invest in analytics. They'll say, we are perfectly fine with the way we run things. I don't see why I should be spending $500,000, $1 million on this system when I can run my business perfectly fine this way. The cost part, which is anytime somebody agrees to do this, they have to pay a lot of money to make it happen. And then, particularly if you go up the pyramid, like in any organization, you will find that the use of analytics goes down exponentially as you're moving up an organization. If you're the CEO, you're probably looking at numbers, but you're not actually you're not yourself doing any kind of analysis with that. You're expecting somebody else to do it. While there are going to be questions as a CEO which you would want to answer, right now the model is, if you have questions, ask the team and they'll come back after a week and give you the answer. And if you keep on, go through the channel, you will find that the use actually increases as you go down the organization. It doesn't go, it is not higher as you go up the organization. So what we need to do is the following. We need to move away from a data and tool-centric world to a decision-centric world. And this, I think, is, by the way, one statement, but it has significantly large implications. What it basically says is all the talk about big data, all the talk about technologies, all the talk about tools is good, but doesn't solve the problem. What you need to be talking about is focusing on what decisions are being made and how do I make those decisions better. And by the way, if you start thinking about the implications of this piece, there are significantly large implications. And I personally believe that the whole data and analytics industry is actually going to get disrupted by taking a decision-centric view of the world. Technologies, the way they're being developed, implementations that are being done in various organizations, they will all change once you start taking a decision-centric view rather than a data-centric view or a tool-centric view. And again, this would go back to, I think this would relate to all the folks, all of us who are here. We tend to talk about a tool. This is the tool that we have. We tend to talk about how we integrate data. But every time I talk to, in fact, this is very true about the companies, particularly in Bay Area when I've talked, everybody's looking for use cases. Can you give me a use case for this that we could use? People are willing to buy our technology, but they want to see what applications are going to be for this. And if you look at it, it's basically crying and saying, guys, take a decision-centric view of the world. Don't take a data-centric view or a tool-centric view. If you start from a decision and start working backwards, you will find that everything changes. How you use the tools, how you deliver analytics, what you do completely changes from what is happening currently and throughout the industry. In fact, so much so that we are betting our company on the decision-centric view, because I believe that is what the future of the world is going to be, not what we see right now. So we came up with a name for this, and we call it decision engineering. And as I said, I think it's a new paradigm for delivering analytics. Essentially, what you're doing is you're turning the traditional insights model on its head and saying, I don't care about insights, I don't care about data, I don't care about tools. All I care about is how can I make a better decision. If I am running promotions for, let's say, a retail chain, I want a tool that helps me run a promotion that will give me more or incremental sales than what I did last year. Solve me that problem. Don't tell me how you did it. Everything goes under the hood. Whether I'm using SQL there, whether I'm using NoSQL databases, all of that is going to go under the hood because people are going to care about how is it helping me make better decisions. And that is what decision engineering is all about. The way we believe decision engineering is going to be delivered or actioned is going to be through a man-machine based combination and having to develop a productized model. So essentially, let me actually explain what I mean by that. It's a little mouthful. First is going to be that we will have to embed analytics into the decision workflow. This is a question I ask a lot of people in the data world and the tool world. Do you know how these decisions are made? Do you understand the process through which a particular decision is made? I'm coming up with all these data, I'm coming up with dashboards, I'm coming with these insights, but I have found that most of the people have no sense or no understanding of how is this decision being made. What is that people start off doing? What's the next step? What is the third step? What's the fourth step? And what we believe is that you have to embed analytics into the decision workflow itself. So as a user, you will still go through your decision-making process, and the required information will be provided to you at the right point, at the right place, in the right form. That's the first requirement. The second is the focus has to be on improving decisions. What it basically means is, I think most of the people might care a little bit about insights. I want to understand my customer. But if I give them a choice between you will spend an hour getting an insight and understanding your customer versus I will give you an hour where I'll give you options how you could improve your decisions better, my feeling is people are probably going to go for the second. So that's what really affects their performance. That's what they're really trying to do with insights. So the focus is going to be on improving future decisions. And I'll make this a little real with an example as well. The third is that insights, instead of delivering insights, what you have to deliver is proactively deliver action options. You have to be able to tell to a decision maker, here are 3 or 4 different things that you could do to get to the goal that you have. And if you want to see what are the insights that are driving that, and by the way, the model of getting to that is not going to change. We will still have data integrated. We will all have go through the same process that we do. But that's not what the final output is. The final output is going to be that if you are a marketing manager, here are the 5 things that you could do to hit your goals. And that's going to be very, very important. The fourth thing is going to be about delivering analytics at the right time and at the right place. So let me actually share an example with you of one place where we are actually doing all of this. We have a client who has a freemium model, right? So they give away they give away a big part of their product free, and you can continue to use that product. And then some of the customers might decide to pay for premium products, and they become paying customers. Very much like what LinkedIn, Box, or any of the companies are out there. And the big challenge that they face is that the percent of people who are actually paying is a very small number. It's about 0.5% that pays for the product. The rest of them are all free users. So the challenge for them is how do we increase this conversion rate? So, we actually have worked on this problem with a number of our clients. Our traditional approach was we would have a team that collects all the data, does some analysis, and comes back and says, we found customers who are most likely to convert will have done activity A, B, and C. So can you run some programs or some email campaigns or something to get people to do A, B, and C? That was our traditional model. And by the way, it works. It does give you a good result. But I don't think it gives you good enough results. So what we're doing there is, we started with step number 1, which was, let's understand what the decision workflow is. So we spent time with the VP of analytics and his team, understanding and seeing how does their day go through. And here is what I realized. Monday morning, when the VP of acquisition walks into the office, in this case it's a he, what does he want to see? First thing he wants to see is how was the last week? What were my numbers for last week? And those are dashboards which are relatively easily available. But his second question is, how is this week going to look like? And that's a very important question. And till we started working with them, they had no way of figuring out what the week is going to look like. So what we did was we built what I call forward-looking dashboards for them. So there are predictive analytics built behind those dashboards that tell you, based on the information that we have, what your acquisition numbers are going to be looking for this coming week. And that's a very important number for him to look in the morning on Monday, because based on that, he decides whether he's going to focus on this particular issue for that particular day and the next day, or focus on a lot of other areas where his attention is required. So that's the first difference that comes in, that you got forward-looking dashboards, not just backward-looking dashboards. The second is, let's assume there is a gap. I was hoping that I will get 10,000 new customers this week, but my dashboard tells me I am going to get only 6,000. So the next question is, what do I need to do to cover that gap of 4,000? Right? In the traditional model, there are insights that you can go and figure out and see what to do. What we've done is we've actually built a tool that tells them, here are 6 programs you can run. So it tells you, for customer group A, you can do an email campaign with the following message, and please send it at this point of time. And similarly, it creates 20, 30 different options. So as a decision maker, your life has been simplified quite a bit. That you don't have to now figure out what to do because the options are in front of you. The next question was, now I have all these options. What are the what is the best combination of programs that I should be running? Again, that is, that's where we provide a simulation module where you actually can simulate and say, okay, if I run email campaign here, I do a in-product offering here, I run something on my blog, what will happen? And we can then predict what your numbers are going to look like. You can also include new programs that might not be part of it, and and our software is actually able to then figure out what's the most likely scenario coming out of that. So essentially the focus there is that instead of shooting an arrow in the dark when you're making a decision, we are giving you a lot of information, help, and confidence about what you're going to be doing. Right? So that way, when you take the decision, you have a pretty good sense of where you're going to end up at the end of the week. And by the way, there might be a need to get additional budget. You can run quickly to the CFO and say, hey, this week I need some additional budget to run this program because otherwise I'm not meeting my numbers at the end of the week. You can make a much stronger argument about why you need that. Okay, so once the programs have been finalized on Monday, he has a button that he presses, execution happens. The next thing is, once I'm running a program, I want to know how well are my programs running. Am I still going to miss my goal? Or am I in line to exceeding or matching my goal, right? So what you need is proactive monitoring of individual programs that are running to tell you whether they're running well or not, so that you can make any changes or any modifications when you still have time rather than at the end of the time. We have a client in the hotel industry where they run a lot of promotions, and we have a whole team that sits and does all these promotion analysis. But all those analyses are done at the end of the quarter. So everybody gets to know what worked, what didn't work, but everyone's question was, if this program wasn't working, could somebody not have told me beforehand? I would have made some modifications to what I'm doing. What we are able to do now is, because again, using predictive analytics, we have a prediction that we build for each program. We are comparing and seeing if the actual output is deviating from what was predicted. And if it is, we'll let you know so that you can take some action and still meet your goal. And again, you'll see throughout all of this process, the focus is on making sure that the decision maker gets to where they want to get to. And again, most of the time, they don't see the analysis. Most of the time, they don't care what are the different groups. So we, for example, do a micro-segmentation of customers behind them. They don't need to see that. What they get to see is, here is a customer group, here is what you should be doing, and do it at this point of time. So what are the benefits of decision engineering? These ones will actually become a little easier to understand now. As I said, forward-looking dashboards, simulation of actions before taking any decisions, proactive action recommendations. You can optimize the metrics that you have for your target. We have a client where we built some tools for the sales team. So when the sales team goes to a particular store, they can recommend to the store manager what SKUs should they be carrying beyond what they have. Again, it proactively tells the salesperson what they should be doing, because they have to just put the store number in their cell phone, actually smartphone, and from there it can figure out what the next best SKU is. So we're not telling them any insights about the store, we're actually telling them what they should be telling. And by the way, in this particular case, we are going through a pilot right now, and we have 18% increase in sales without really changing anything. They're not spending any extra money. It's all that the recommendations that a salesperson is getting are tailored to that particular store, and we're running some deep analytics behind that. Yeah, I talked about the robust and confident decision making earlier as well. Again, when you're taking these decisions, it's much more robust. In fact, I'll give you an example of where this becomes very useful. We have a client so their team in China, and this is actually about a year and a half back. The Chinese market was growing very fast at that time, and they were getting so much pressure that your goal should be 40% growth. And using our tools, they were able to figure out that with the budget they had, they could hit 30. So instead of the meeting being 40 versus 30, it was very easy. With the budget that I have, I can give you 30. Give me more budget, I'll give you 40. So the discussion becomes much more easier, it's much more friendlier, and you come in with a much more robust database of what you can really do and what you can't. Yeah, this is actually an interesting piece that has come in, which is as we started working with our clients, we realized that because we are running all these analytics on customer data, we can proactively inform them about customer behavior changes, which is that as the behavior changes, we'll let you know. The traditional model has been, I run my marketing programs, I find the marketing programs aren't working as well as they used to. So I go to my analytics team and say, guys, can you look at it, what's happened? They will do analysis and say the customer behavior has changed. The problem with that is it's post hoc, after the change. While with our methodology that we're using, you can actually now know the behavior as it changes. And that's very powerful and sometimes can be worth a lot. I just used the example of China. For this particular client, in October last year, the Chinese market suddenly stopped growing. They went from about 40% growth to 7 or 6% growth. But by the time they realized that had happened and changed their marketing spend, it was about a quarter. So for one whole quarter, their ROI on their marketing spend was absolutely crazy because they continued spending the way they were spending earlier while the incremental sales were just not coming. Right? So through decision engineering, you actually are on top of all of these changes in real time. You don't have to wait for end of the quarter to find out. You learn about it as it happens. The final one is another interesting one, which is what I call institutionalized learning. See, one of the things that happens in decision engineering is you are monitoring every action that's being taken, and then you create a database of all actions that you take. So if I'm running email campaigns, I can track every email campaign, and I track all the characteristics of that campaign. Who was targeted? What was the content of that email campaign? What time did I send it to? What was, what channels did I use? All of that, and I also have the results along with it. So using that database, I'm doing two things. First is I create what I call institutionalized memory or institutionalized learning, sorry. I have a database through which I can find out what works and what did not work. Traditionally, if you had a great manager of acquisition, he or she would learn over time what works, what doesn't work, and your programs are doing very well. But at some point of time, they get promoted, they leave the organization, or they decide to do something else. And all that learning is gone. But because we maintain and create a database of all of this, that learning never goes away. And in fact, that's how your decision engineering becomes smarter over time, because I have a record of every action that was taken. I know the context, I know the results, so I can actually recommend what you should be doing at any point of time. So, I'll just quickly run through this page. So again, the idea here was that, all of these improvements that I just talked about are significant over what is available in the market today. And our customers who've been using decision engineering are seeing market-leading metrics for the areas that they have focused on. And again, the reason I'm talking about this is because I believe that is how everybody will have to eventually look at it. If you think of it, SAP and Oracle and everybody else, all the ERP guys, automated all the processes within companies. But one process that they have not automated is the decision-making process. And what I believe decision engineering is going to do is automate the decision-making process as well. So what does it take to deliver decision engineering? So from a technology point of view, again, this is my perspective. I'm sure some people will develop some other perspectives along the way. I believe there are 4 components that you need. The first component is, and by the way, all of these components exist. There's nothing new here. It's just how we're putting them together. Integrated data. You need to put a lot of data together. So for example, when we work with our clients, I find customer data is very nicely available, but what marketing actions were taken, what were the characteristics of those actions, that data is not being collected very well. So one of the things that we help our clients is start tagging the data, start collecting the data, and creating a database of everything that's being done. The second is the man-machine model. Traditionally our focus has been on that I build some software, the software will take care of everything, and that's what I'm going to deliver to my clients. What we've found is that you have to have a man-machine combination here, which is you have to have people working along with software to make it successful. So for example, in our case, we have people who still work on the statistical modeling piece, who still work on the machine learning piece. So your data scientists aren't going anywhere. They're just doing slightly different kind of work in a slightly different environment. But that combination is very much required. In fact, my favorite example of that is the IBM Deep Blue example, right? So you guys must have certainly heard of when Deep Blue was challenging Kasparov, and it beat the world's best chess player relatively easily. But what actually wasn't that popularized was that later on they did another test where they took second-level chess players, gave them a laptop, and got them to compete with Deep Blue, and they beat Deep Blue every time. So what essentially came out of that was that if you have a man, a human, and a machine combination, you are a lot more powerful than a single human being and even the machine itself. Because there are certain things that computers do very well. Like in case of chess, they can very quickly calculate all the combinations. But there are other things that humans do much better than computers. So if you put the two together, you have a very strong combination. And we believe that's going to be very important for decision engineering to happen. So you're not going to see a situation where, there's a question, by the way, many people ask me that, does that mean that my marketing team is going to get replaced by a computer? Not at all. Because you will have to have a combination of your team and the computer piece that we're building. That's going to be the most powerful combination. The third piece is around cloud-based delivery, because given all of the stuff that is getting done, we have found that a cloud-based delivery model works the best, where the decision makers don't have to worry about what is happening. You keep the analytics, you keep the data piece all outside of that and provide it through a cloud-based delivery model. And then I think one of the most important thing is the interactive and intuitive interface. Most of the decision makers that we work with tend to be, at least senior director and higher level. And you have to make the interface very intuitive, because they're not going to spend a whole lot of time trying to figure it out. It's much easier for us when we work here in the Valley. People actually like little technical stuff and they want to see some details. But the moment we step out, for example, we do a lot of work in CPG and retail and hospitality. You have to have something that gets people excited. The way I look at it is that it has to generate the same kind of excitement that a kid has when they see a video game. We have to actually hit that metric, so that anytime we are able to hit that metric, I know this is going to be used. We have a client, the large sporting goods company that you probably know who it is. The head of apparel business for them, when we gave them a pricing product, went and spent 1.5 hours in the meeting just playing around things and figuring out what will happen to their business if they were to do something. Because it was easy to use. They could see that if I move my price for this product here, I can see my revenue, I can see my margin, I can see which channel is happening what. So it just becomes like a game. There's engagement that happens, and so this becomes a very important piece of what we are doing. So the design trend, which probably started with iPhone, is actually going to continue in this area as well. There is also this whole thing about how it works from a business logic perspective. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on this one, but it's basically that you have to keep problems in. You have to understand the various business rules that people use. You have to incorporate them in. You have to do some root cause hypothesis analysis, and so on and so forth. So, but again, there's a particular process that you use from a business logic perspective as well. So I'm going to just talk about one more thing, and then I'm going to let you ask questions. What are we doing through decision engineering? I think, and I mentioned this earlier, I believe we are inventing a completely new class of software applications, something that is completely white space right now, because there isn't anything out there as yet. And by the way, people have just started talking about it. I referred to a paper earlier, 2 weeks back. Forbes had an article which actually talked about exactly what I'm discussing here. It was, for me, it was very exciting to see somebody else. There is a partner at Venrock, the VC firm called Brian Asher. He's written the article, and it talks exactly about what analytics should really be. And it was very nice to see, because this is exactly what we've been working on as well. The second is huge impact on top line and bottom line. You know, we have, I mentioned a couple of examples to you. The SKU recommendation piece that I had mentioned for a store, 18% increase in sales with exactly the same sales force. Nothing is changing. It's just that they're recommending a different SKU than they would have done earlier when they were, you know, thinking on their own. Second, you know, the conversion piece that I mentioned, we've increased the conversion by about 16%, and it's still a little early stage, without an extra dollar being spent on marketing. So, and the money that's coming is all top line and bottom line, because the marginal cost of servicing these customers is very little. So that's the kind of impact you will start seeing coming out of this. And then, of course, it also means that, you know, we as a community and as an organization start working directly with business decision makers rather than something in between. So our output goes to the person who really can impact the business and who can really change and make changes happen. You know, I've been in this situation where a lot of people feel very frustrated that we do great analytics, we have great data, we built all these tools, but I don't get the seat on that table when people are making decisions. And I believe this is our way of getting seat on the table, because we will drive decisions. We will work directly with decision makers to get them to where. And that is where the value of analytics and data and all the investments that are being done will suddenly start becoming very, very clear to everybody. And then, you know, this is, as I said, this starts building use cases for big data, something that every big data is craving for these days. So, you know, because you're starting from decisions and then you're going back. So, for example, in the conversion case, we have shown them that the conversion ratio is affected by what's happening on social media. So now what they do on social media is directly linked with end results. But it didn't start with the social media analysis. It started with a decision and then linking it up with social media. Yeah, so I think that was basically, so I already mentioned that what we're doing here. So I think that's all I have. Say any questions that you have. I think, you know, the biggest tip I would have is, oh, sorry, yeah. So let me repeat that. The question is that, you know, we work with a lot of managers, and we're always trying to get them to use more data in their decision making, and do the forward thinking, and, you know, maybe similar to what I was talking about. What are the tips to get that to happen? I think I have one big tip, which is put yourself in the feet of that manager, and understand what are they going through and how are they making a decision, and then come back and show them how they could do things better. You know, the focus in many organizations I have seen is being, how do I change behavior? How do I get people to use data when they're not using data? And I think that's a very tough thing to do. What is a lot easier is to understand how they're doing things currently, and then show them, I can incorporate my data into what you're doing, and you will get better results. And you will notice that people will start doing that. The change behavior is one of the toughest things that one can do. And in fact, we had a particular situation where a senior manager walked in and said, you know, this is going to be garbage in, garbage out. You guys have bad data, nothing is going to change. We fortunately were funded by some other group, so we could still go and do that. What happened was, once they saw the results, all we did was just put, you know, nudge, here is the data, here is how you make decisions, we will provide you the information at the right time. Once the results came back and their numbers had completely changed, you didn't have to do anything after that. So that is the critical piece that you have to do.
More of a follow-up too. You know, you start at the decision, you say, we're going to increase retention. Because I was stopped 2 weeks ago by saying, let's bring in Hadoop and some big data. And the question came from that you're going to find the insight that you're going to get for the decision. You know, it's like a cart before the horse. You have to take, you know, you just have to show an example when you were funded somewhere else, and you had to prove yourself. Get past that hurdle.
Yeah, I think, you know, the way you get past that hurdle is by focusing on and talking to the decision makers themselves. The reason we had to get through that hurdle was because we came the traditional route of saying we'll do analytics and we'll give you these results. Now that we have started having conversations with decision makers themselves, instead of coming and saying I can do analytics for you, the conversation is what are your strategic goals for this year? How confident are you that you will meet those? I have a way that I can guarantee that you will get very close to those. Would you like to have that conversation? Right? When you have that conversation, and particularly when you know they're not using analytics, I can guarantee to a very large extent because I know. We've done it enough number of times that I know. You know, if you're not doing analytics, there is no way. I have never seen that we haven't shown at least a 5-10% improvement. Even if you're very good, we always do that. So, thank you. So, you know, so that's the point, because when people start working with you, doing this, it works. And I'll give you an example. We have a product, the conversion product that I told you about. When we did the beta, the first company that we talked to in 3 meetings agreed to do the beta with us. In 3 meetings, and this is not a customer that we had ever worked with. Because it was very clear to them that they were bleeding money, they needed money. And we were promising. The promise was good enough that they said, go ahead and do it. Because that's where the value comes in. So yes, you can't target every decision. You have to find the right kind of decision where the impact on the organization will be large. They'll be happy to fund you. Any other questions? All right. I appreciate your time and thank you. And I hope this was a good use of your time.